Splines are a series of points connected by paths in 3D space. Though they actually contain no dimension, they are the basis of NURBS modeling. And if you skip the intro chapter and aren't really familiar with NURBS objects, you might want to watch the video titled Understanding 3D. Now, if you've ever used Adobe Illustrator or the Path tool in Photoshop, you're actually already familiar with one form of spline creation. And there are actually several different kinds of splines you can create in Cinema 4D, as well as a whole host of pre-built spline objects. I find myself using splines most often to easily create organic structures based on the structure's profile, or skeletal structure if you will. Let's get started by understanding the tools used to create splines. Then we can move through the rest of this chapter using splines to create NURBS objects. So to create a spline in Cinema 4D, go up to the spline pop-up menu, and let's go ahead and just rip that off and add it to the top of our scene, just so we can reference it as we move throughout the rest of this video. And since I mentioned path splines in Photoshop and Illustrator, let's get started creating a Bezier spline path. Go ahead and click Bezier, and just left-click in the scene a couple of points. And you'll notice as I click throughout the scene here, the path travels directly through each one of my points. If you click and drag, you notice you can drag out Bezier handles. Now, since I created this spline in the perspective view, I'm having a hard time seeing exactly where this spline lives in three-dimensional space. If you click on the orbit tool and orbit around, you'll notice that it defaulted to actually creating this spline on the ground plane. And if you go to the structure menu here, you'll notice it actually shows you exactly where each one of the points are on this plane. Notice none of them have any Y value. So with the fifth point selected, which is actually the sixth point because there's a 0 point as well, I can go ahead and double click on any value and just type a new number to move that point. Let's go back to our objects menu and go ahead and delete this spline, because most times when you create spline paths, you'll actually want to be in one of these orthogonal views. Let's create the path from the front. Now let's go ahead and create another Bezier path. And since I just deleted my Bezier path, I have to go back up here and choose Bezier again and click in the window. Go ahead and click and drag out a couple different control handles, because I want to show you how to manipulate these handles. When you're done creating your points, go ahead and press Enter on your keyboard to set your path. And you'll notice now you can't see the points that created the path. Go ahead and grab your Use Point tool, and now we can see the points again. So to move the points, just go ahead and click on the point and click on the different axis handles to move the spline point. Now, if we want to change the Bezier handles, go ahead and click on the Bezier handle, and you'll notice they both move exactly the same way. If you want to quote-unquote break the handle, hold down Shift on your keyboard and then click on one of the handles, and you notice I can move the handle independently of the other handle, just holding down Shift. Now, if I let go of Shift and click on one of the handles, notice it keeps the angle that I have set, but still moves them both at the same time. Now, if I want to reset these handles, go ahead and right-click anywhere in the scene off of your object. And if we choose Equal Tangent Direction, now you notice it actually moved the tangents to become straight again. Let's choose a different point here, hold down Shift, and change the angle again, and we'll just right-click again and say Equal Tangent Direction so we can see it again. Now, if you're ever in a situation where you can't actually click and drag out these handles, you might accidentally have your selection tool selected. Notice I can select a point with the selection tool, but when I go to click on the handle, I can't actually grab that handle. Don't panic, just grab your Move tool, and that will allow you to go ahead and grab the handles. Should you ever want to add a control point, go ahead and hold down Control and just click right on the spline. Now I've automatically created a new point. Again, it's just Control click right on the spline. Now that we've covered some of the options for Bezier splines, let's go ahead and look at another one, B-spline. Just select the spline in your Objects tab and press Delete, and we'll choose B-spline. Now with B-spline, you won't actually see your spline until you create 3 points. Notice as I continue to add points, the spline that's getting created doesn't actually move through any of the anchor points. This is a great tool if you're trying to create a really smooth organic shape. And again, to set your spline, go ahead and press Enter on your keyboard. Let's look at one more. I'll just go ahead and delete the B-spline. This time, let's look at Akima and just click through the scene. And you'll notice Akima rounds out the spline as well, but much like Bezier, the spline path will actually travel through each one of the individual points. Now let's explore some of the pre-built spline objects. Go ahead and delete the spline object we just created, and let's choose rectangle. And you notice when the rectangle pops up, I don't have any points to adjust. If you want to change the height or width of your rectangle object, go ahead and just change it in the attribute menu. Now, one of the nice things about a rectangle object, if I want to actually create a rounded edge rectangle, all you have to do is select the rounding box, and it automatically rounds out that rectangle. And again, if I want to change any of the settings, I can just change the numbers here in the attribute window and adjust the rectangle accordingly. Now, much like parametric primitives, when you create pre-built spline objects, in order to actually get the edit points, you have to come up and click the Make Object Editable button or press C on your keyboard. And now you'll notice we have our spline path. And this brings me to the start point. And what I mean by that, every path has a point that it uses as its start point, the very first point that gets set on the scene. And the way you can see that is the color shading of the spline. So for example, here, notice it starts with white and then it gets slightly more blue as you move around the spline. So if I deselect Close Spline, you'll notice this is actually my start point. And this is now my end point. Let's go ahead and close the spline again. If you want to change the start point, all you have to do is select that point. I'm going to go ahead and grab my selection tool and just select this point in the lower left corner. If you right-click anywhere in the scene, you can set the first point. And now you notice my first point is traveling around the opposite direction, and it's over here. So if I reselect my spline and deselect Close Spline, you notice now I've changed my first point. Okay, now there's one last tool in creating spline objects I really want to show you. Let's go ahead and delete the spline we just created, and we'll choose a linear spline. So let's go ahead and make a sharp angled spline. Go ahead and set your spline object and grab the Use Point tool. Let's select this upper left-hand corner and right-click to open up the menu. And the tool I want to show you is called Chamfer. Chamfer rounds out any point that you have selected. And you notice its icon very clearly shows you it changes the 1 point into 2 rounded points. So to round this out with this tool selected, go ahead and just click and drag in the scene. I'm dragging to the right, and you notice as I drag, it's now rounding out that individual point. And in the attribute menu, I can go ahead and type a specific number if I'd like to change that. Now, if you select the flat option, it just goes ahead and makes your path angled again. Let's go ahead and deselect that. And you can see Chamfer is actually an excellent tool to use to create some nice curves to your splines. So now that we can create and edit our splines directly in Cinema 4D, you might be interested to know you can also import your splines using Adobe Illustrator files, which we'll do in our next video.